The things I want to kind of cover off the top that I think are important organizationally to communicate about is this is kind of a unique press conference in that it's our 15th season in Oklahoma City as the Thunder. And we're extremely, extremely grateful for the 15 years that we've had, the players that we've had, past and present, all of our staff that we've had, past and present, our community support, our fans, the civic leadership, everybody that it takes to create a basketball team from scratch. Looking back over the last 14 years as we head into 15, it's been a remarkable journey. 11 of those 14 years, we had an 11-year run where we had the second best record in the NBA, the fourth best record in all of pro sports cumulatively, and we've been to the postseason 10 out of those 14 years. And that doesn't happen without tremendous cooperation, partnership, collaboration, persistence. And it's not just the organization, it's also the community and all the people around it that help support the team. So I think it's really important to recognize that. At the same time, you reflect back, you only have, 1/15th anniversary, but when I think back to where we started in 2008, we were looking up a pretty steep mountain. We didn't have a team name. We had no uniforms. Some would argue we didn't have much of a team at the time. We didn't really have pens or pencils. But we climbed the mountain. We fought it as long as we could. We stayed up there for a long time. We had, like I said, a pretty good run of sustained success. And now we're facing another climb. And it's equally as rare. It's pretty rare to be in a situation where you're starting from nothing, as we did. And before I go further, I do want to acknowledge that we've had some season ticket members that have been with us since 2008. They've been here forever, and hopefully for longer as well. I can't name every single person, but kind of randomly picked 5 families that I want to acknowledge just because I think it's important to do that as a representative. So we want to thank the Adler family, the Bridges family, the Fraley family, the Moore family, the Ryder family, and the Zorn family as representatives of the fact that these people have been season ticket holders for 14 years going on 15 years now. And like I said before, it really takes everybody to be able to do that type of thing. The challenge we have in front of us now, as I said before, it's the second climb, so to speak, is unique because it's a totally different era. It's a totally different era of basketball. It's a totally different era in terms of the industry. We're still third smallest market, but we also are in a time where the things that were commonplace or conventional years ago would probably seem unconventional now. That's it's just a different time, which makes it a totally unique challenge and a different challenge for us. It's also easy to forget that just 2 years ago we were still on the mountain, before we had descended to start the second climb, and we're obviously very early in that. But 2 years ago, Shea, Lou, Bays, those guys were playing meaningful minutes in the postseason game in the bubble, and it's been a remarkable 14 years when you think about all the things that were kind of accomplished within it. As far as this season goes, I think we have a pretty wide bandwidth in terms of the potential outcomes of the team. We project to be probably about the second youngest team in the history of the NBA, second only to last year's Thunder team. When you have an older team, or like maybe a team that has more track record, whether it's good or bad, your bandwidth is shorter. You can predict those types of outcomes a lot easier because there's more known. There also is probably a little bit more of a cap on the potential of the team because of those things being more known. And the floor might be a little bit different as well. But our age and relative inexperience is absolutely going to be a positive for the team over a long period of time, because inexperience will turn to experience and our guys will get older and better as time goes on. But that's the beauty of watching any team, any young team in pro sports, is you're actually watching it kind of evolve in front of you. And I don't think anybody would say that we're not a work in progress. At the same time, I think we're a better team than we were the start of the time last year, and we're going to be a better team at the end of this season, absolutely, because of the fact that we have some very young players that are going to continually improve. So our age gives us the potential to recognize the high side of our bandwidth. Our age also gives us the potential to recognize the downside. In order to kind of be scalable and make sure that the team continues to improve year after year, we have to have a standard of play. Last year, we talked in this setting about a baseline. That was a big thing. This year, I think we want to try to establish what those standards would be for us so we can measure progress on our own internal scorecard. That starts with preparation, competing physically, mentally, and emotionally. That sounds easy. It's extremely hard for professional athletes to do that on a consistent basis year to year, and especially younger teams. We have to play physical. I mentioned that at the end of last season as well. That's not a trait that's commonly associated with younger teams. We have to be committed to a style of play that doesn't just work for 1 year, but can be scaled and adapted and modified as time goes on, and as we add new players and our existing players continue to evolve and improve. And we can't seek shortcuts that are actually setbacks in waiting. And that's the way, I think that's the challenge of any type of building process in your own lives, in our own lives, in work or in business, whatever it might be. Shortcuts that lead you to setbacks that are just kind of latent and waiting there, that's what we want to actively try to avoid. Now, if we want to recognize the potential of the team now and in the future, we also have to overcome the common distractions that generally young teams have to confront at some point in their evolution. So, for instance, young teams, and I think our guys are spot on with this stuff, but I think that we have to be cognizant that these are generally the things that are headwinds for younger teams in sports, but especially the NBA. Not seeing the season as a process, but seeing as like a day-to-day judgment, that is going to create, that's going to slow progress. But you have to see the season as a bit of a marathon or a test. Getting overly concerned with statistics and accomplishments. Everybody has personal ambitions. That's great. You need to have that. How does that fit within the framework of the team? That's another thing that's pretty common. Communication internally. A lot of times, younger teams, they don't communicate with each other because they're not comfortable with that yet. Usually happens as you get older. Remember, we got young people. And a lot of times, they communicate with people that aren't with the team. And those people's incentive may not be what's best for the team. So those are common things that happen in all walks of life, and the NBA is no different than that. Letting other people set the agenda for what's important or what the priority should be or what the outlook should be, that's another common threshold that every young team has to face at one point or another. And just the general, wanting to just skip steps that are necessary to go through in order to get to the goals that you want to ultimately achieve. So for us, like I said before, to punch above our weight, a lot of that comes down to what the priorities are. What are we disciplined in how we're stacking our priorities? we're going to learn those things over time because every young team hits that. You know, do you want to skin your knee, bang your head, and then learn it, or can we be intentional, building that into our mindset that these are normal things that you have to confront? Every young team is going to face that. Essentially, what I'm saying is that our pace of learning and maturity has to outpace our experience and our age. And that's why I think that's the great thing about our team. I think we're talented, but I think a lot of times people feel that younger teams have a hard time winning, but they don't identify the reasons why. Part of the reasons why is these are things that generally people learn later on in their careers. And that's why the older teams, when they say veteran teams, they're not just talking about older teams. They're talking about understanding some of the things we're talking about. So we want to be really intentional about talking and putting those things in front of us because that can really help our team, reach the potential that they have for the current season. The West is going to do that on its own anyway because the West is so tough. Much has been made about our schedule, and it's the toughest schedule. It is. It's also going to make us better because we have to go out there every single night and compete against, the best teams in the league. And I think that's actually going to do us a lot of favors in terms of our progress. As long as we have that baseline we talked about and we're able to observe the season as a whole, which I think we will. The other thing about accelerating beyond our age and our experience is something that every team has to deal with is there's going to be predictable distractions that happen in every season. That's in the modern NBA. That's in the modern world that we live in today. It's, whether it's, and you guys have heard me talk about social media. Social media is great. I'm not saying that it's got so many positive things, but it really has nothing to do with winning basketball games. If anything, it's probably more directed towards luring you away from that. Not intentionally, but there's a business that is being conducted there, and we have a business that we're conducting here. And part of being a really good NBA team is being able to perform without necessarily getting distracted by that. The sooner a young team, this is again my opinion, can understand that that's not a penalty. That's the price of admission. That's the price of admission for being an NBA player, for being a professional athlete, for being an NBA team. That's not a penalty. This is what you have to overcome and what you have to deal with, and you still have to perform at a high level. And once I think the team realizes that that's a test of their maturity and discipline, to be able to separate those things, again, older teams do a pretty good job with that. And that's one of the reasons why their performance is more consistent. There's going to be distractions, and there's going to be things that you have to block out. That doesn't mean they're all bad. It just means they're not necessarily all driving towards your goals. And so a lot of that is focus and priorities. Now, I also think we have a pretty long runway with this particular team. Shea is just entering his, what we call pre-prime years. Josh, Chet, some of the other guys we have are still, a few years away from getting to that point. But at some point here in the near future, you're going to have those tenures overlap, so to speak. And that's extremely exciting when you think about the progress that the guys have made, even this summer, when you see some of the players physically at Media Day without them even touching a basketball. You'll see that these guys really are young and they can improve rapidly physically. And it's really exciting to think about, when we get a few of these core guys all kind of overlapping during their prime years, we could have a lot of fun with that. That doesn't mean we can't be successful and win a bunch of games in the near term as well. But we're working towards that period of time where those guys are overlapping, and when they do, if we prepare physically, mentally, and emotionally, and we have these things prioritized like I talked about, I think we have a chance to be pretty good. Now, unless something like the CBA or something we're not aware of disrupts kind of the infrastructure, we should have the team in a good position based on how the contracts are aligned and the ages of the team, and we should be able to continually come back year after year and say, hey, I think we're going to be better. And part of that's just going to be dealing with the adversities that we deal with and also managing the successes that we have. A lot's been made about the schedule. I talked to you about that. As far as this season goes, nobody knows how a season's going to go. I know people have tried to put a number on the games that Chet would cost us, and I would say save your predictions, burn your assumptions. That's. I mean, I don't know what good that really does. At the end of the day, there's no facts about the future. There's only opinions, and that's fine. I'm just really happy that I don't have to be in a position like you guys to make predictions about things that everybody knows. Number one, no one's ever going to remember, and number two, you don't have any clue, and I don't have any clue either. Last year, they thought we were going to win 9 games. When we had CP and Gallo, I think they thought we were going to. You have to let the season play out, and I've done this for 20-something years now. Predicting the future is not in my wheelhouse, and you have to let the season play out because you never know. It's not just your season you're predicting. You're also predicting 29 other team seasons. So, I don't know how it will go, but I know that there have been a lot of years where people have said this is what's going to happen, and in the first 10 games they're running scared from those predictions. So let's wait for it to play out before we decide this is what it's going to be, because I really don't have an idea. Because you have a young team, like I said before, if we prioritize those things, we'll punch above our weight. I'm pretty sure about that. I mean, we had a top 10 defense last year for a lot of the season. Does that mean we're going to have a top 10 defense this year? No, we got to go back to zero and learn those lessons, not let other things block in. But we're also not playing the same teams either. The other teams are different. The deck gets shuffled every year, including our own. When we get back to the postseason, it's not going to happen because of one season. It's not going to be like, well, this was the year that did it. If it happens this season, it won't be because of what happens between now and the postseason. It'll happen because of a series of seasons. That's always the way things occur. At the time, things, they seem arduous. They seem, far-reaching, but it's always a series of seasons that adds up. What we're looking for is overall improvement over a long period of time. That's not the most sexy, exciting thing that I could say to you. But, it's more persuasive to create this illusion of control than create the reality of uncertainty. It's like, so that's not what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to mislead anybody, but it would be easy to try to find something that's more catchy and exciting. But we just want long-term overall improvement. That doesn't mean every season is going to go the same way. So, basketball teams are not like something you wind up mechanically and they just go on like a metronome. It's not a Kraftwerk song. And I like Kraftwerk. I think they're hugely, hugely important to modern music. But it's very, very syncopated, right? It's not like something that Steve Gadd's playing or, Jeff Porcaro's playing or Bernard Purdy's playing. It's very, very mechanical. There's no feel in that. That's just not how people or teams work. There's going to be a lag. There's going to be sometimes it goes faster. Over time, we want to have more years where we feel like we make progress than we don't. And for us, progress is dictated by where we start and where we finished. Last year, we were coming into camp. You guys had a lot of questions about Josh Giddey. You saw him play 5 minutes in Summer League, and there were some significant concerns over those 5 minutes. And we were projecting those 5 minutes over the next 15 years. By the end of the season, we had more information. Trey Mann, Aaron Wiggins, Jeremiah, they were totally unknowns. By the end of the season, I think we had a lot more information to say, hey, these guys might have a chance to be part of the team that climbs the second mountain. We don't know that for sure because there's going to be a lot of competition for those 17 spots. But we just added another group of guys, and we'll have more information about them in the future as well. So progress is, for us, it's all about the terrain in which you have to cover, that from where you're starting. And I think we're going to make progress this year. I'm pretty confident that we will, based on what I've seen so far, based on my belief in the coaching staff, based on how I've seen the players, the mentality of the players, because your mentality and your mindset creates your reality. I really, really feel good about that. And in the years that you get some tough things that come your way, like Chet's injury, you have to keep going. You just can't give in to that. You have to continue to follow through on the mindset that, over a long period of time, we want to have more years, or more good years than not. As far as Chet, I also want to say that the thing we probably lose more than anything, and because I think developmentally I'm not concerned about that. I actually think having a year to learn the league, to experience the cadence of the league, to work on his body, to understand the personnel in the league and all the different schemes he's going to be seeing, I think that's going to be actually extremely beneficial. The area where we probably lose the most is tactically being able to see him and how he interacts with the core of the rest of the guys. We just won't get that exposure. And I can't sugarcoat that for anybody. I want you guys to always look at me and say, he's telling us what he really thinks, and that's what I really think. This is a bit of a setback tactically for us because we're not going to get to see that. I don't think it will be developmentally, and I also think that the team will absolutely figure out and morph into a lot of different things we wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to see if Chet was playing. Obviously, it'd be better if he was. But the fact that he isn't, I don't think is self-limiting. I think it's limiting in that we won't get to see kind of the interaction, but we're going to. We're going to get to that. We're going to go a year without it, which is just how it goes. It's just how sports goes. Just a few more things, and I'll get to all your questions. So I think, in general, people are, including myself, including everyone here in the organization, nobody's really good at identifying the time it takes to reach your aspirations. So if we said, okay, how long is it going to take to get to Philadelphia if we had to drive? Everybody in here would give an answer. It would probably be wrong, unless you looked at your phone, right? Which would be cheating in that case. So the other thing is, I think everybody always underestimates how hard things are that they want to do. I want to lose 15 pounds. When you really do it, it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. In the words of the Thunder philosopher Royale Ivy, easy to say is hard to do. That's another great thing for the young team blind spots we were talking about. Easy to say is hard to do. That was why we had Roy here, and Perk had, you can't get bored with the process. So those guys are, they're scholars of Thunder University. But what I was saying earlier about the fact that people are bad at predicting things in general, the other thing is any form of resistance is seen as catastrophic. So when you set your goal or you predict your time, when you run into any type of resistance or headwind, it's the end of the world. Because to start with, you're probably wrong to even be predicting things instead of just putting one foot in front of the other to solve problems the way it's most effective to. And remember, it's supposed to be challenging and difficult no matter what. And that's another thing I think for us we talk about internally, which is we live in a world of immediate convenience. People don't even go to the grocery store anymore. People don't want to sit in a line, right? You want to order a pair of shoes? You don't even have to go to the store. You just hit a button. It creates a comfort crisis, because then when you actually have to do something for yourself, it seems like you're being asked to climb Everest. And in our path and what we're doing, in order to really enjoy the best parts, you have to also have some conscious discomfort on the hard parts, because that's what's going to allow you to enjoy the other parts, even more. It makes it sweeter when you're not just accustomed to just everything being laid out perfectly for you. So we're heading, into another season. There'll be plenty of adversities, but there's going to be plenty of great moments. We're not going to hit a button and make it easy for everybody. We can't do that. We're not going to wrap everybody in bubble tape and shield them from difficulties, because I think that's what's going to make getting to the top of the second mountain of sustainable success even that much more meaningful. And I'd say that to our fans as well. It's like having kids in the backseat of your car, driving somewhere, saying, when are we going to get there? When's it? We would all laugh about that, because the answer is, I don't know. We're going to Philly. I don't know how long it takes, right? Now you can look at your phone and say exactly this, but you wouldn't want to tell your kids that, right? Because it just means they're going to scream and yell even longer. I speak from experience on that. And then you can threaten you're going to take the car to the side of the road, and even though you're not going to do that, because it's going to make even longer for them to scream and yell in the back. What I'm trying to say is there's an immature way that you go through problem solving, and there's an immature way you go through problem solving. And the car ride, I think, is a good example of the struggle that we all have with convenience and ease in the world that we live in today. We're not trying to make it convenient, because I think that's going to limit our potential. When you adjust your path, you're limiting your potential. At the same time, we can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but I would rather aspire for something like a second mountain, a sustained stay on that, than just speeding myself to a situation that could otherwise be avoided with patience. I think that this is the last point I want to make. I think this is one of the more representative Thunder teams that we've had. And the reason I say that is because we've talked a lot about the city, the state, the fact that we pull a lot from the values of the city and the state to try to build and sustain our organization. And on this particular group, there's a lot of underdogs with this particular group. There's a lot of commitment with this particular group. There's loyalty with this particular group, and there's resilience. The commitment is, we've had guys working their tails off all summer, all over the world. In a gym near you, there's been a Thunder player that has been crushing it. Loyalty. Shea, he's made a long-term commitment here. Lou has made a long-term commitment here. Mike Muscala, Kenrich Williams. I think that is appreciated in our community, because they are not just basketball players here. They're also people of the population, people of the city and the state. The resilience within the team, I think the team has been extraordinarily resilient. I think Mark deserves a ton of credit for that, as well as just the character of the guys. They've battled, they've fought. A lot of them, that's how they've gotten to the place that they are. Not every single one of them has been handed an NBA career and a silver platter. They've all had to overcome something. We got guys that are too skinny. We have guys that don't have a position. We have guys that weren't drafted. And to me, that's what makes the team very representative. Like, great. That's what we're trying to morph into something that can be really special for the city and the team, in that relationship. And I think that's one of the reasons why being a Thunder fan right now, I always talk about the fans that bleed blue. Being on that journey, seeing these characteristics within the team that you're supporting and riding with that team, that to me is that's what I want for people. Like I was walking through the airport the other day. And I was just walking, and someone yelled from behind me, thunder up. And God, that made me feel good. It made me feel really good. And what it made me feel is like, God, I really want the people here to experience like another postseason. And I was at Pearl Jam the other night, and I was looking out at the crowd and how full it was and how just people were on their feet. Like, there's something about that type of energy in the city that's just awesome. And when we get there, it's going to be not because we took the path of the easiest path. It's because we did it organically. And there's going to be 17 guys that have fought their ass off to have a spot on that team. And it's getting harder because the team's getting better. A few years ago, we were just looking for NBA players. We're 2 seasons in, and we're going to cut NBA players from our team that aren't going to make the team because we still have enough spots. So when we climb the second mountain, there's a lot of guys that want to be part of that team that scales it, that's part of the catalyst, part of those catalyst moments that get there. And I know I can speak for everybody in this building, like, we're going to work hard. We're going to work as hard as we possibly can. But we're not going to watch the clock. We're going to be pace setters on that because it's going to make it more meaningful when we get there. And I'm just really grateful. Like I said, I started with some of these names, the Adlers and the Zorns, and we're working for them. We want them to have the same thing that we want to have. And I think that's important in a small city like this. And the journey continues in year 15. And when we get to year 20, we'll look back and year 25. But the first 15 years, you smashed a lot in there, and it's been a great ride, and we're excited for the next 15. So try to get to every question you guys have. Try to make it a discussion as much as we can in these settings. And I appreciate you hearing me out so I can speak directly to the people and to the people that don't have a seat in this specific room that I don't get to communicate with directly as much as I would like to.
Sam, when do you expect Shea to be ready by the start of the season?
I don't know the answer to that. Just because the injury just happened, everybody's body is different. We could go online and we could, say, this is how long it takes to get this. That's on the average person, right? So, the average, no pun intended, the average Joe, there's nothing average about you. You're an elite performer. Yeah. But your MCL is very average. And so the average MCL, right? If we're looking online, that's the average person. This is a pristine, professional athlete. He uses that MCL for his career, and he needs it to be as good a player as he's going to be. He probably has an edge on his health, probably heading into it, but he also has to rely on it a lot more than somebody that's on WebMD. So we have to just see what happens, in 2 weeks, how he's looking. We'd love for him to be ready, but we can't make predictions like that because nature is uncooperative.
He's missed pretty significant chunks in each of the last 2 years. I know all of these injuries seem unrelated, but are there any long-term durability concerns with that?
I mean, all of these injuries seem unrelated, so no.
Can you tell us how he sustained the injury?
Yeah, he was just working out in the gym, and I wasn't there at the time, but I think he just lost his footing for a second, and his knee just kind of turned inward. He finished the workout. He didn't have any pain at all, but woke up the next morning and was really stiff. So we evaluated him. And fortunately, we're right close to the imaging, so we got him in the MRI and got the read, and that's what we expected it to be. But this is just, I don't think it's a big. Not to say all injuries are important, but I don't think that it's a massive deal. I think it's a setback. I'd rather it happen now than in the middle of the year. Obviously, these injuries happen, and guys miss time in the middle of the year. But we'll get through it, and we'll take care of him. I mean, it's unfortunate, but he'll be fine.
Sam, you talked earlier about kind of performance and progress being about where you start and then where you finish. I'm just curious, as you head into this year, but thinking about last year's team, where do you see some progress that group made kind of heading into this year?
Well, I mean, a lot. Like I said earlier, I think one of the things that, relative to progress, like so much of it is, and Mark uses the term discovery, which I think is a good terminology, because so much of the progress that gets achieved in an NBA year is not intentional. It happens through like random things, and you just have to be very observant. So there's a big difference and again, this is just my point of view. There's a big difference between invention and discovery. Invention is like predetermined. We're going to do this. We're going to play with 3 point guards. And one of them's Chris Paul, and one of them's, then there's like discovery, which is like, wow, this kind of works a little bit. Interesting. You got to put it out there. All the evolution of the game wasn't a result of invention. So much of it is just discovery, things that happen. And the only thing we can control, and I think we did last year, is you have to widen the circle of opportunity where you can discover things. You can't just say, let's be creative. That doesn't solve anything, right? You have to create the conditions where things can happen. You have to put people in situations. You have to try different things. I don't think you can predict that they're all going to work. You just have to have an environment. I try to foster this with the coaches. Don't be afraid. Don't fear outcomes. If you create a situation where you're going to try some different things, that's okay. We have to learn about the players. If we get fixed and predetermined about, this is what this is, or these are the 9 guys, we are so limiting our potential upside. And I would say that even when we had the some of the better teams we've had, we would never have known Reggie Jackson was a pretty good player unless we had an environment where we were looking at, the team is good, but could it be better? And so you don't do that by predetermining things. You have to kind of set the conditions for discovery, but you can't control what you learn. But you're not walking into it saying, we're going to, Don Nelson didn't say, we're going to change the game by playing all these small players, or Mike D'Antoni, he's like, well, I don't really have a center, so I should probably throw this guy. And that's how the game evolves. And it's going to continue to do that. It's easy to say that convention only looks unconventional, in retrospect. And I think that's the case even with our teams here. The game is totally different than we were playing, years ago. It's easy to say. It's easy to take the ideal norms of today and compare it with the past. But it's also like saying, it's like criticizing Andrei Kirilenko for not taking more threes. Wait, you're going to criticize Kirilenko for not? He's a great player of that era. That era did not take as many threes. Does that mean he's not a good player? He was a great player for that era. Comparing him to if he played today, he'd probably play a little bit different. But that's the era. You can't penalize him for that. I think we like to do that in society all the time. And I think that's a mistake. I think you just got to understand that progress is going to come each season, and you have to observe it and not judge it. And that's hard for people to do. I'm not asking other people not to do that. I'm just saying for what we do, you can't judge every day. You have to observe. And like I said, you want improved performance over a period of time. It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but Warren Buffett's made a lot of money doing it.
Hey Sam, as it relates to Lou, last time we talked to you was that when rookies were introduced and it sounded like maybe his extension wasn't going to happen. Can you talk us through what did happen and how it got to the point that you guys were able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a willingness for him to be a part of the organization going forward. There's a willingness for the team to want him to be a part of the organization. I'm trying to recount it. That was so long ago. It was a while ago. But when you have if you have mutual interests, a lot of times those things work out. I mean, we've done a lot of extensions over the course of time. We've done a lot of, like a new contract, in his case. But, he wanted to be here, and I think he's going to do great. People forget how young he is. He's been around a little while. He's still getting better. The thing is like I know the easy low hanging fruit is going to be, is he gonna, want to have to prove his contract, and is he going to play outside of his identity, and that will be like the common expectation, right, in the NBA. Like things I was saying earlier. Right? Like the things that are the headwinds. Like, yeah, like there'll probably be some of that in his mind, right? Our job is to explain to him, no. We need you to be the physical catalyst, the culture catalyst, the competitive catalyst. We don't need you to do more. We need you to do more of what you do well. And a lot of that transcends tactics. The guy plays every possession, and he's on the floor, and he plays physical, and he's still young, so he's getting better. He's going to continue to improve, but his value to the team has already demonstrated that, in my opinion. Now he has to let that bleed into the other teammates he's playing with too, in terms of setting that standard of physicality and competitiveness. But yeah, it's a tempting thing for any young player to feel like they have to validate things that are coming from the outside. And I think the more mature teams, the more mature players, they've learned that through mistakes. I'd like us to learn those things through intention. I love the group of guys we got. I love their mentality. I love their makeup. I love their character. When I say these things, it's like just from experience watching the NBA. These are generally the things that can you learn them eventually. Everyone learns them. But how quickly can you learn them without having to live through the experience of saying, that wasn't good, That's a big thing, I think, for us.
Sam, people around the league, us in the media, fans, I assume even front offices or around the league are always talking about who the next star is that's going to be available after Donovan Mitchell was dealt this offseason. A lot of people have brought Shea up, and I know you don't like addressing speculation, but I just was wondering how you would respond to that and how you all view Shea sort of within this organization.
Well, I think the only reason we're talking about it is because another player on another team got traded. And the machine, the aggregation machine is empty now. So we need a little more content. And I'm not even saying, like I said, that's the price of admission. It's not a penalty. No one's out to try to disrupt the Thunder or create problems for the Thunder. It's just, this is the business we work in. You shouldn't be surprised by that because there needs to be content. It's a business. We need attention. Attention drives advertisements. Advertisements drive salaries. And that's how it works. We have to be able to perform irrespective of that. So I just think I'm level setting that to say that if Donovan Mitchell was not traded already, you wouldn't ask me that question. So therefore, I don't think they're related. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think how we feel about Shea has anything to do with that. I think you're doing your job, totally respect it. I got to do my job and point that out. We love Shea. He's going to be such a good player. He's got so much room to improve. And he's already really good. The thing about him is, I feel this way about the Molson twins in general, Shea and Lou. They're both, you can't get long-term results with short-term people. Neither one of them, in my opinion, is a short-term person. And that's the reason why we've made commitments to them that we have. And they're significant commitments. But they, I think, are trying to be part of that 17 that's there when we start that next run. And I think the world of him. There's so many positive attributes about the guy outside of just being a really good player. But he has a lot of work to do. And so, like, he's been in the playoffs 2 out of 4 years. His first year, he was playing with 3 point guards, so I think we need to probably go out and find another point guard. I'm surprised no one's like, why don't you guys have 3 guys? You know, no one's asking that, but that's because that, if it was controversial, we'd be like, it would be fill the coffers and everything. But I think that he's going to have a great career. He's got the right mindset. He's highly skilled. He has work to do, like I said. But when he's in his prime years, and some of the existing core is physically, emotionally, and mentally in their best years, I think there's a lot to look forward to over a continuous period of time, unless something out of our control disrupts. We've had that happen before. My fingers are crossed that's not going to happen. I would be shy. It would be. I couldn't call it a coincidence. You know what I mean? If it happened again, but I think that in the short term, he's still extremely talented, and so are the other guys. So there's a lot to look forward to. Is I guess what I'm saying with him.
Sam, you've got some roster decisions to make. Does Chet's injury alter that thought process?
I think it's a good question. I would say that it's probably a piece of it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't weight it heavily. It's probably a small part of it. But like I said in my comments earlier, coming out of the bubble that season, where we had a lot of churn, you know what I mean? We were just because we had 2 weeks to make trades and training camp and all that. We were just trying to find NBA players. Our roster did not have, because we were in this repositioning phase. Now I'm confident that we're going to end up releasing some guys that are NBA players that I think will go on and play well, depending on situations that they go to, because that's so important to the success of players in the league. We're going to have to see how it unfolds. The one thing about us is we're never going to go in deterministically and shut off our point of view. We're going to see what happens. I mean, anything could happen. We could experience another injury. I would hope that wouldn't happen. Trades generally don't get made around this time, but that could happen. Someone could play exceptionally well during camp. That's what competition is. And the roster construction is certainly a piece of that, but I wouldn't weight that entirely, because we have a lot of options existing on the roster in terms of how we've played that position over the last several years. What the part we're really missing with Chet is, like I said before, we're going to lose a year of how does this all work together. You know what I'm saying? Specifically our most talented players, because I think they should. The more you can see it, the quicker you can get to kind of building things out.
How does how players perform in camp affect, roster decisions? I know it's just a small sample and you've got a long history with a lot of these guys, but how much are you weighing, how they look heading into the season?
Well, I mean, I think when you're having to make decisions like that, this is part of the body of work. I mean, so is the previous time you've had with them, summer league or the experience you have. Everyone's being evaluated on a body of work. I think it's kind of silly to evaluate people on their worst day or their best day. It's like I'm gonna keep saying it again. Like you want improved performance over a period of time. And I don't think you can just get a snapshot of anybody. People can have the worst day in the world and still be, elite at what they do, and they can have a great day, and they may not be very good. It's just you got to see a body of work, and I think that's what we'll do when we get to that. When we get to that stage, Mark, myself, the other people in the front office will sit down and try to figure out what the best decision is there.
You mentioned Chet's injury deterring the team tactically. Does that?
I would say it's. Can I just? I don't want to say it's like deter. It's like a little limiting. It's not like it's not catastrophic. It's just like we're gonna miss out on that.
Does it alter any goals that the team had?
No, because again, I mean that's kind of interesting because we don't. Like I said, we're not in the business of predictions. Like we've just done this too long, So the goal is continuous improvement. The goal is creating a style of play that's scalable, so that when he does return, there's more and more corporate knowledge amongst the returning players, if that makes sense. Competing physically, mentally, and emotionally on a consistent basis. Those things are absolutely critical. And our pace of learning. Those things, if we're expert in those areas, we will improve, we'll get better. And so I think there's fear in just saying, here's what we want to do. We're so much more focused on how we do things than just saying this is what we're going to do. I think to channel Royale, easy to say is hard to do. Our goals are continuous improvement and not taking shortcuts that will ultimately lead to setbacks, like I said earlier, which you can do in the NBA easily.
And this is the first offseason in a short while that is somewhat normal. Does it feel that way? And then if it does, how does it feel to get back to some type of normal?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You absolutely notice the difference. There's no question. I think what we've all been through the last I don't even know. I don't know, years. I mean, because the other thing is my biological clock for 20 years has been based on basketball. So people say years, I say seasons. So I don't even know how many years or seasons. But I was talking to someone from the Heat the other day, and they're so tired at the end of last season, and it was well, yeah, we played 2 seasons in a year. And I just thought that was hilarious, you know what I mean? We played 2 seasons in basically a year's time. So did we, But yeah, it feels much different. It's also much better for development. I think people are really wanting the season to start, not that they weren't before, but it's the accumulation, the aggregation of what was going on, because it's not just the physical toll, but the testing, the bubble. I mean, I can't tell you what that was really like. I mean, I really can't. That was kind of crazy, Had to be done, but it was, looking back on it now, it's wow. It just makes you. I think it makes you realize how fortunate we had been that we hadn't had those types of. In some ways, it's healthy to have those restraints put on you and realize makes you value the time a little bit differently that we've had in the off season.
Hey Sam, one of the things that's percolated this summer is Mayor Holt talking about need for a new arena. What's your feeling on that, and then what's your sense of how the organization will work with the city as they develop timeline and plans and all that sort of thing?
Well, what I could say about that, Jenny, is the first thing that needs to be said is the relationship between the civic leadership here and the organization is uncommon. I mean, it's all part of what makes the basketball in Oklahoma City so unique. You know, I've tried to explain that to people in the league, you know, in with the other teams and stuff like that. It really is unique. You know, it's a unique place. Now, part of it is because of how we started. You know, 15 years ago, when we arrived, that starting point, like from scratch, from nothing, from no logo. I mean, this was non-existent. You build relationships, and I think that you also recognize the mutual value of those relationships, and so that's the greatest thing. You know, when I hear Mayor Holt speak, and those relationships will be important as time goes on. But I'm really confident that there'll be a great partnership, as there has been since the day we arrived. And I like to think part of that is also because we've tried to be a great partner with the community. I said at the end of my last press conference, I mean, I don't know if it's the end, but somewhere in there, we were pretty limited in what we could do in the community with COVID. And that I kind of made a bit of a statement that, like, we'll be back out there. And we have been. And we've been, this past summer, we've been out there quite a bit. And it's been awesome. You know, and I know that stuff doesn't get covered as much anymore, you know, and not because it happens a lot. Like, I think it's a good thing because it's normative, you know. But we're in the community almost every day doing something. We got something, I think we're unveiling another Thunder Court near Scissortail Park. We've got the book bus recently. Someone sent me pictures of Jalen, Jay Will at a Love's with their granddaughter. That's just very unique here. You know what I mean? And it gives me the opportunity to say to Jay Will, hey, when we talk about being a Thunder player, this is part of that. Now, a lot of the guys that have been here for the last 2 years haven't had that full 360 experience of what being a Thunder player is because they haven't had the opportunity to be out in the community. But I think that's part of the reciprocity of a relationship. We've always taken it seriously. We want to be representative, and there's a mutual aspiration for what the city can potentially be. And when we arrived here, we had this thematic thing that was said, "Rise Together." I think everyone probably remembers that. Some of you might be too young. But Rise Together was like the city and the team was both aspirational, trying to get to a point where we had some of these things. And I think the thing I love about Mayor Holt is he's maintained that aspiration, you know, to strive for having first-class things in Oklahoma City. I think that's great.
Do you have a sense of how long something like that could take?
I think when you're in the stages that we're in, I don't even know that there's more than a conversation that is taking place. And I think that could go in multiple pathways. And I don't want to speak out of turn. I can only speak to the relationships and my confidence in those.
What impact will Chip England have on this team? Just not now, but also moving forward?
Yeah, I think Chip is a really a really special talent and a special person. He, like anyone that is highly skilled, sees things for what they can be and not for what they are. And I think he does an excellent job of building relationships that allow for people to improve. That doesn't mean that improvement doesn't happen immediately. And part of improvement means that you have to be willing to make adjustments to things that you're already doing and you've had a lot of success with. That's a challenge also with a lot of the different people. But I mean, I mean, a lot of people point to different players he's helped over the years. But like what he did with Thiago Splitter, that didn't happen immediately because there has to be some, you have to try these things and there might be regression until you get to the point where, and you need to build up enough tolerance. So I don't think it's an immediate thing. I do think that he's going to work with a multitude of people. And I think he is only additive to the organization. But he's not his work is, I think, empowering the players to explore their potential. And he does it in a unique way.
Sam, going back to the Pearl Jam concert, what did you think about getting a shout out from Eddie Vedder on stage?
First I'd say that it was my son's first concert, so I had my son there, and he was late to school the next day, and it's funny because when he told his teacher why he was late to school, and the good thing is she said that she was there too. The thing about they're great guys. They're great guys, and they, number one, I mean, their sustainability is pretty remarkable. I mean, these are guys that they've been through a lot of different eras. I remember dating myself, but the first time I saw, I saw they did the Unplugged. Remember when Unplugged was like a brand new thing, and they did that Unplugged series? It was the first time I saw. It was probably just my age. I think it was in high school when they did that. I like the intensity and the passion that Eddie Vedder had, like performing. I was like, man, that's what a real artist looks like. I remember it just resonated with me. Like, this guy is totally immersed in this. Like, I always remember that. Like, it was just so visceral and so like it like really struck a chord with me. But the thing that was great is like, I don't know how many of you were there, but they said some things about the team and how the team, was previously. And these guys are huge basketball fans, and I've got to know them a little bit over time because they're so nice. But I loved the way they talked about that. They kind of took the temperature down on that topic a little bit. And I do think it's important to recognize also that, like, Seattle is an incredible place, is an incredible city, and they will have a basketball team again. And I think all of us here, like, that's a positive thing. That we're hopeful that happens because it's a great place, great fans. And the arena that they've built there is just, it's spectacular. So, when it happens, it's going to be great. And I think everybody here recognizes that that's an important thing. That should happen. At the same time, like, things here for us have been great, and I just give them a lot of credit for the way they handled that. I think it shows a lot about just like them, be honest with you, because I think that's because it also gives me a chance to say the things I'm saying now too as well, which is like, Seattle's an awesome place, great basketball community, and will be, again shortly, I think.
Sam, is Lou 100% ready to go?
He's doing contact, yeah. I mean, he should. I'm always, and everyone asks me those questions. This time of year, I just get a little bit cautious just because between now and, there's stuff going on right now I don't know about. So, if you imagine the Shea thing happening, let's just say it happened tomorrow, the day after this, the world we live in today is so cynical and so is so rational. The assumption would be that I knew. I just wasn't saying. So there's nothing that I'm aware of, that would limit those guys, the guys that we have, other than Shea and Chet at the moment.
Sam, it seems like, sorry, this random question, but I don't think we've asked you about Vasily Micic before, and it seems like every offseason there's reports that he's, weighing the NBA and everything like that. Can you just tell us where things stand with him?
Well, we have his rights. We traded for his rights during the Horford trade with Philadelphia. We intentionally wanted the rights to him because we think he's a really good player. He's really taken off since the time in which we acquired his rights. And, all I can tell you is I thought we were pretty close at one time. And then, he has a contract and he's committed over there. But I wouldn't rule anything out. I wouldn't rule anything out, but it's probably a year-to-year thing.
Can you tell us what you envision the offense looking like with this team? You draft a lot of guys that are good with the ball in their hands, but at some point, how scalable are some of those players? How do you envision the offense ultimately playing out a few years from now?
Well, a couple things on that. One would be going back to invention versus discovery. The real answer to your question, Andrew, is I don't know. I think if I gave you an answer, that would be really limiting, self-limiting, because the team is so young that the players are going to evolve and improve and get better. And if we say, well, this is what it has to be, then you're trying to fit people into a box, so to speak, when in reality, our job is to try to create an infrastructure, a framework for them to play at their best. The trick is, and I think I understand the genesis of your question. There's a lot of guys that need the ball and to be at their best. There's two things to me at the root of that question. To answer that question, one, you're making the assumption that every single one of them is going to be successful, right? So it's well, geez, how is everyone going to play? Well, that's the assumption that all of a sudden everybody's great, everyone's reaching everything. We don't know that. So what we're doing is probably prioritizing the fact that we don't know how it's going to look. So having people that can do multiple things makes it easier to adapt and not be limited by the infrastructure because of the guys that can do more things. I think what you're seeing, I guess, if anything, is every team I don't think anything we're doing is unconventional. What would be unconventional would be have one point guard that walks up the court and has the ball the whole game. That would be unconventional. Conventional would be having a lot of playmakers, guys that, maybe our difference is that we have big guys, so we have taller guys. But everybody's looking for the same things for the most part. Unconventional would be Shea has to have the ball time, or Josh has to have I don't know anyone that's playing like that anymore, Ours is probably our opportunity for unconvention, because I do think that's important, right? I don't think you can be really, really good by being conventional throughout everything you do. I think our size, our age, I think the organic nature in which the team is learning and growing together, as Mark says, learn through experiences, the way we're communicating directly with the guys about what our expectations are, what our goals are, and how we professionally want them to improve. That to me is where our unconventional. What's convention is having a lot of playmakers, and that's what everybody's looking for. So if we run into a situation where we have too many good players and playmakers, I will solve that somehow. The other thing is, when you talk about that, or we talk about that, not you, but when we talk about that, all of us, the only way that becomes a problem is you have people that are not willing to sacrifice for the team. Because it only becomes a deterrent if you can't utilize everybody. It's just like, well, everybody needs the ball. It's like, it's basketball. That's how it's supposed to be played. Everybody should be touching the ball. That's the way that you would generate efficient offense. So if you have people that are like, well, I can only play this way, that's really self-limiting, especially with a young team, because the team's going to change. Like, Trey Mann's a different player than he was last year. We're going to have to account for that. That is not just schematically, but the rest of the team is going to have to account for that. Now, it's easy to say, you know, we should just focus on one guy, but then we'd be saying that guy doesn't have enough help. And then we bring in people that can do other things, and we'd say, how are they going to coexist? You see what I'm saying? It's like we're arguing both sides of the menu there. So we'll see, but hopefully we have that problem.
Sam, a question about team building and roster construction. Have you seen teams become increasingly liberal with how they're trading first-round picks? Like, in the past, it seems like a thing big market teams do, but this summer we've seen, Cleveland and Minnesota make those types of deals. And you talked in your exit interview about, like, knowing when to press the button, basically. Like, how do you know when that time comes? And just what have you thought of, what's happened around the league with some of those other small market teams?
Well, two different questions. I think what's become apparent is that draft choices have become a commodity or currency that they probably should always have been recognized for, just because of what they represent in terms of like a team building structure. But I think it all comes down to also the cycle of the team and what the goals are of the team as well. So it's been well documented. Like, Minnesota has, I don't think, won a playoff series 30 plus years. They got some great new owners. Tim's going to do an awesome job. They get Chris Finch. They're going to be. I'm excited to watch him play. But I also think you can't discount. Like I said, every one of these teams is on their own path, and it's not just like. I just think everyone's goals are attached to their strategy, and you can't. It's a horizontal timeline. You can't just cut it off and say, well, the Thunder are, 2 years removed from the playoffs. Well, okay, but we had, what did I say before, like 70-something percent, 75% of the time since we've been here, been in the playoffs or something. I mean, you can't discount the fact that that's kind of your working off of that. Best example I give, just a horrible answer, so I'm going to try to save it with this, is I always say that the NBA is poker and not chess, because chess, everybody starts from the same spot, gets the same pieces, and you get to play, right? Poker is the NBA, which is everyone gets a hand, and you play that hand the best that you can. And that hand is constantly, like, it's not Minnesota, who was the other team you mentioned? Cleveland. They're playing hands that are different than Golden State, Phoenix. So that, I think, is also going to guide their decision making. And I just don't think it doesn't have anything to do with us in our, you know what I mean? So I don't see it relative in any way, because our hand is different. I think the hands are similar in the small market nature of it, but I don't see any different, because we're like I said, we've climbed a very unique mountain the first go, because we didn't have a team. We're only 15 years in, and now we're facing another one in a totally different time era, game's different, industry's different. If we were talking last year, if you were asking me this question in 2009 or 10, and someone had traded all those draft picks, that would have been very unconventional. That's becoming more conventional. That's the league. That's what I'm saying. The industry has changed so much during that period of time, and that's not that long ago. That's how I would look at it.
Sam, your other two lottery picks, the guys that are healthy coming out of Santa Clara, Jalen and Guzman. I'm not going to figure out the
That's all right. We know what you're talking about.
But those two guys, I think a lot of people think that Jalen's probably going to play a lot and contribute a lot. Guzman maybe not quite as much, maybe G League. How will you balance using them, but having time in the G League? I mean, is it too early to say?
I think it's early. The answer is I don't know. One, I mean, a lot of that's Mark, sitting down and figuring out, like, how do we maximize and optimize the development for everybody and the team development. Usman, obviously, we have a longer lens on, just based on his age and where he is. I mean, I sat up here and I didn't know Sabonis was going to start. So you have to kind of let it play out. And everybody has a different developmental track and needs to be stimulated in different ways. I think Poku is a really good example in general, because when he arrived, he was the youngest player in the league, and then even his second year, he may have been one of the youngest players. I think it was one of the fifth youngest players in the league. He was coming from a place in Europe where he wasn't in like a basketball infrastructure. Like you know what I mean? He wasn't coming through where he was playing, second division, Greece. He was behind a little bit, more so than other players that were coming from Europe. So that's his starting point. His trajectory, like, he's had 2 positive years from where he started from. Now, there's been a lot of volatility in those years, right? But if you look at it on the balance, where he started from, and he had no summer league the first year. First year to the end of the season, when he came back from the bubble, definite positive. Last year, same thing. By the end of the season, positive. I think he's going to have the same positive trajectory, partly because this is a guy, and again, like, he's a great underdog in a lot of ways. He was the youngest. He has obviously, like, physically he was behind a little bit, and he has had every opportunity to kind of fold, and he hasn't done that. And he's better. I think he's had a good summer. Now, the minutes will be harder to come by because the team has improved, but I think you have to have an understanding that development is a process and not an event. It's not something that you can judge day to day. That's why I think if you looked at certain points of Poku's season last year, you'd been, geez, like, this is rough. And then there'd be other nights where he'd be, by the end of the year, he was really improved. You just have to wait and let it play out. And I'm not asking anyone else to do that. I'm not saying to try to take the fun out of it, but objective, rational, thoughtful, historical, that generally helps drain the emotion out of just judging every single thing on the merits. I just think it's hard to do that with development.
I know you're not going to watch the clock. You're not going to say, like, this is the year whenever we'll do X, Y, Z. But what does it look like when you start to turn picks into players that you'll, move in to help the team? Like, what does it look like when you start to do that? Because you can't roster. You have so many picks, you can't roster everybody. But what does it look like when you start to turn those picks into, like, players to come help the team? Does that makes sense.
Can you, well, when you say look like, what do you mean?
Well, I'm trying to, I'm trying to just ask.
Yeah, just shoot it. Just say what you want to say.
Like, what does the success look like, I guess? So, like, is it making the playoffs? Is it, like, winning a round? Is it getting the play-in? Like, in your
Is there
mind?
something that triggers that, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I really think that the team declares itself. I go back to, I don't want to say it's like an example. It's an example, but I mean, I've used it before. We had Jeff Green starting at 4 with the core of the team that would accomplish a lot of the records that I mentioned earlier. We were like a 50 win level team. Not a net 6 team, but like pretty good. But we kept playing Memphis and Denver and LA and the Clippers, and they had really big front lines. And this is another example of, like, if we want to judge the past based on the idealized norms of the present, we would say that the Zach and Gasol teams were misguided, and Gasol and Bynum were misguided, and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan were bad teams, and what were they thinking? And the Thunder was stupid because they had this. That was just a different era of basketball. Like, Karolinko should have taken more threes, but we couldn't compete with those teams. But we had to go through that to figure that out. And I think, like, the team will show that through its competition, because I heard this phrase a long time ago and it always stuck with me: friction polishes. Friction polishes. When you run up against difficulty, it gives you ideas as to, like, how to solve for those problems. We haven't run up against that yet because I don't think the team itself has really declared who we're going to be ultimately. And I think that we are definitely on the path to that. But I don't think we can say and predict the needs of the team because we're not a fully formed team. That's why I was saying, if you want to get some answers to that, the priorities have to be in the right areas first. Like, we can't see the season. We have to see the season as a marathon of improvement. Older, more experienced teams do that. That helps them understand their needs. You know what I'm saying? We have to prioritize. Personal goals are great and important, but, like, we can't let that get in the way of performing at a level that helps us really identify our needs. And I'm not really worried about that with the team, but these are just the ills. When Vegas does the lines, the over-unders at the beginning of the year, the young teams generally are picked to not win a lot of games. That's not because they're not talented. It's because young teams generally have a hard time prioritizing those things to win a lot. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not just inexperience and age. It's also, well, what are the other things that young teams have blind spots on? And the team with the least blind spots gives themselves the best chance to win. And teams that have been together for a while have less blind spots. They communicate better internally. They address things directly with each other. They don't talk to the people outside the organization to take direction for how to perform inside the team because no one else is inside the team. You're going to get, it's not intentional, but you're going to get very individual focused, directives. And so I just think all those things have to coalesce. Then you start performing on a consistent basis where you know what to expect. And then you go, this is not good enough. This is short. Now, there's never going to be a perfect team. I've said that forever, because every time you fix something, you're leaving the back door open somewhere else. Like I said, the blind spots are knowing that's the back door and that you have to, as a team, collectively account for that. Even the Warriors or the Clippers, I mean, they're gonna go through the season. There's gonna be something that they're like, well, this isn't as good as it could be. And these teams are really, really good. And a lot of times the collective wisdom of the team And that's why I like watching the national teams. Those national teams, like those are some of the best teams in terms of like the way the game is played, the way they care about each other, the way they sacrifice for each other. There's just a genuine love amongst those national teams, those Argentinian teams. I feel so lucky to have been around some of those teams when Ginobili and Scola and Oberto and Pepe Sanchez. I mean, those teams are operating at such a high level internally that they weren't the most talented. They knew they had limitations, but they collectively solved for those problems through communication and recognizing that there was a marathon to get to the medal round, and they made each other better that way. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to reveal itself, but we have to be consistent enough to demonstrate what the needs are, and then we have to have alternatives that actually make sense to add. As we've seen, though, there's a lot of players that get traded for draft choices. Those draft choices have become more universally valuable. We don't know what the new, rules potentially could be that could change those things. I would be surprised if they became less valuable. I mean, that's the best answer I can give you. I don't really have I don't want to sit here and say, hey, look, I really know the answer to this question. That's what's top of mind for me. That's how I would think about it. Flexibility, optionality are the best things, and getting consistent performance from the team, knowing what you have, because you also don't want to go make an acquisition in an area that you might have a burgeoning solution. And now, because what you'd like to do is be able to fill the needs where you don't have that. To your point earlier, Andrew, not every player is going to work out. So you got to let that kind of come to fruition versus try to predict where you're going to need something. The guys that don't come to fruition, that may not make it or might not be as good as we had hoped or get injured or something along the line, that's what that reservoir hopefully can help add. And then you get continuity from those ads as well. I really think the team will improve continuously as a result of the continuity and the collective mindset. And I think the coaching staff is very good. And I think that's going to help us a great deal too.
So Sam, in your exit interview, I'm paraphrasing here, but you basically said when teams, not just your team specifically, are no longer playing games of consequence, it's responsible to shift toward development. How do you define games of consequence? And like over the course of the season, we've seen you guys make that shift late in the year. Like, how do you know when to do that?
Well, I mean, the games of consequence would be like where you're in the position to achieve, I guess you could say, like games that matter competitively in terms of like postseason play or something along those lines. Games of meaning. Every game means something because every game is an opportunity developmentally for your team. But I think it's something that I think people have taken that and like really kind of run with it. If I could say that, like I think people have tried to decode that or maybe even take it and maybe misrepresent it intentionally at times. All we're saying is that generally at the end of the season in every sport, when you are not in the playoff picture, baseball, football, I don't know hockey well enough, you use the opportunity to get experience for different players. Not because you have any ill intention, but you're actually trying to compete for the following year. And so I think that sometimes unintentionally people have tried to take that comment and use it in a way that I don't think is not the way it was intended to be used. If I could be more direct, I would say that we've always taken the approach that we go into every season and we wait to see how the season unfolds. When we had the Gallo team, we were the only ones that said, hey, wait, before you think that we're going to be this or that. Like, why don't we play the games and see how the team performs? And we ran that out, and we were playing for the 4th seed the night that things were shut down. But if we had kind of already determined that what kind of year we were going to have or what we were going to do, we never recognized that. And then, last year, I gave you my answers. We had redlined a lot of the guys. We had some, now you're asking me about Shea's, is Shea injury prone? How quickly can we get him back? Well, last year we were saying, people were wondering if he was really hurt. It's like we can't win. So honestly speaking, of all the injuries that he's had, that ankle sprain in Boston, I had a great view of that. That was a wicked sprain. I turned away when I saw that one. So yeah, I mean, people across the league focus on developing young players as a means to build their team. Portland, Indiana, I think Jordan Poole in Golden State is a result of that. The year that Steph was out for the year with the finger. And that's just how teams are built and constructed. It's been going on in the NBA for years and other sports as well. I'm sure the Royals have a bunch of younger players playing right now because that's how they get experience. That's how you get good.
This is year 15 in OKC, but it's year 16, not in OKC, but overall for you as the GM. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about your growth from then till now?
I do. I think about it a lot because I ask everybody in the organization to reflect and to push themselves to be better, and obviously that has to start with me at the very first, because I can't expect other people to take that type of approach to their own development if I don't model that. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I'm happy to answer them, but I don't know where to go with that unless you're more specific.
I guess it's, in what ways do you feel like you've grown from then till now?
I mean, it's a lot, man. Like, it's a lot. You have to remember where I was, everything I say is coming from my heart, right? So what I say about progress is what I really believe in life. I'm not doing this, this is not performance art. I'm not on Twitter. This isn't Twitter. This is what I really think, right? It's all about where you start from. I started when I was 29. So I was 29 years old. I was scared out of my mind about the challenge that I was taking on. Because I didn't, I don't know how you guys were when you were 29, but I was being entrusted to do something that I didn't really know or think when I was younger would be possible. And so I also was not as emotionally mature and didn't have as much life experience as I have now. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, I think I've grown a lot as a person. I also think experiences and exposure to experiences are really what make us who we are. And so, there's a difference between stepping out of your comfort zone, because you hear that all the time, and expanding your comfort zone. Stepping out is temporary. Expanding is really intentionally putting yourself in conscious discomfort. And I've always felt, for me, that was something I've tried to do. Was, like I said, I've always felt like fear of convenience, fear of comfort. You've got, one of my favorite books is The Strenuous Life by Theodore Roosevelt. I really believe in that. You have to put yourself in difficult positions to learn the most about yourself and build or callous up a little bit. I'm definitely more durable today than I was then. I mean, I also have a family, and that's changed my whole life completely. I have kids. I have 3 unbelievable kids. I met my wife here, or we got married. We met in San Antonio, excuse me. I had my kids here. I mean, life is totally different. It's 16 years, man. you know? If I was the same person, I'd be really disappointed. And that's why I like what I do, because it changes around you a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, things have really changed. That first mountain was incredible, but it couldn't make that. We made it last for, 11 something years. And now we're working in a totally different environment. Like, we can't do the things we did then, because a lot of people are using the strategies we used to get the first mountain to climb their mountain. And some teams never get to climb a mountain because they don't, they never get good enough, Other teams, to get to their second mountain, they kind of like wander along in the wilderness until they bump into it. We're trying to not do the wandering part. Like, we're trying to, the valley between the two, right? We're trying to shorten that. We could go on an expedition and just wait until we bump into it and then climb it. But we're being extremely intentional about how we're trying to do that. That's conscious discomfort. I think that's going to make our organization stronger, more durable. It's going to build more pride in place, and it makes the journey more purposeful. A lot of people don't want to hear that. Like, it's, but I think that's part of self-improvement, and I want those types of challenges. Just like the one here in Oklahoma City, when we first got here, there's a lot of people who didn't think that the team would be successful here. But there was a lot of people in this building that said, like, we're going to make it that way. So I think I've changed a lot. I hope for the better. Most of it learning through experiences and being honest about my strengths and my limitations. And I've got a lot of limitations.
And I could be wrong, but I think your first move as a GM was drafting KD, and then at 2. 15 years later, you draft Chet at 2. Did you feel any more pressure or less pressure than you did now when you drafted Chet?
No, I don't really look at it that way. Like, I think when you're younger, at least for me, you have the confidence of ignorance. Extremely idealistic, but you don't know a lot of things. I think as you get older, you actually realize for real you don't know. I think the longer you go, the more you realize there's very little you actually know. And being comfortable with that uncertainty, like I said before, it's more persuasive to provide you the illusion of control than the reality of uncertainty. And that's why I've said to a lot of questions, I don't know the answer to that. And I think that's a healthier way to approach it than to try to pretend like I can predict how many games Chet Holmgren is worth or how many games we're going to win. There's no way to know that. You have to go through the experiences. You have to be adaptable. You have to take the hits as they come, and you have to enjoy the wins as they, figuratively and literally as they come too. So I don't look at it like pressure. And the one thing I really don't like is comparisons, because I don't think it really gets you anywhere. I think comparisons generally lead to disappointment, and they're never equal, So like, comparing this person's article with that person's article, like, how is that helping the articles? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it really helps. I think it's like you're writing yours the best that you can be. You're learning the most that you can. And that's all. I think that's what we're trying to do. So I'm not comparing like one to the other. Time is different. The industry is different. The people are different. That's why I say it's not craft work. It's not craft work. I love craft work, but that's a certain style. Then there's, the opposite of that would be like something by Jay Dilla, who is lagging behind, intentionally lagging behind. And when people heard that initially, they're like, is something wrong? I remember the first time I heard that, it was on a Tribe Called Quest record, and I was like, what's wrong with this? And I really sincerely, I was like, what is wrong with this? It wasn't until years later that I realized there's like a genius basically doing it. But if I'm sure there's people telling him he's crazy when he did it, et cetera, but I'm not sure how he got on that.
This is the most music press conference you've ever had.
I didn't go into it intentionally that way, but it must have been the concert the other night.
By the way, your son's gonna think every rock star talks to his dad directly to everyone.
Well, if you caught it, he did say my son's name at the end too, because he met him before. But I've got the hardest.
High standard for your son.
Well, yes, and it's also probably not healthy. So we have to get a little more minimal on those experiences. I've come to
Sit in the back row next time.
we were in the back row. I will say that we're in the back row, but yeah, he said Nick at the end, and I'm claiming that was not Collison. So to Collison at least, but yeah, no, they were very gracious. They're great, and they're really good people. So.
How difficult is this particular roster crunch? Like, you have an investment in a lot of these guys, and you're gonna have to let go of guys that you've either like drafted or traded for. And these aren't like Exhibit 10 guys. Like, how difficult is this particular camp for you and your team?
That's a wonderful question. I wouldn't say it's like more difficult. You're hitting on something that's a reality, which is like relationships. Yeah, I mean, especially with guys that you've seen, and again, we don't know what's going to happen, but majority of the team is pretty young. So, guys that have really come a long way. I really feel good about the development of just about every guy on the team so far, and I think they're going to go on to be successful in other places. We're not going to be able to keep everybody. You just want to, here's the big thing. You want to make sure that you feel like they're prepared to be successful in the rough and tumble NBA when they're not here. Like good habits, professionalism, understanding the bigger picture of their career, and a lot of things I talked about. How to prepare mentally, physically, emotionally. Those things are like really important. I'll give you a great example. DJ White. So, drafted DJ. We were in Seattle. We drafted Russell, Serge, DJ, and maybe Devon Harden in that draft, I think. And DJ made the move here with us. He was here. Didn't get a ton of opportunity. Had some injury setbacks. But we poured a lot into him. Now he was just like, really mature, first, second year player just because of his background, his parents. He was just a stud as a guy. And we traded him to Charlotte actually to get Fernazi. And it's funny because they both work here. It's like so ironic. But when we traded him, someone from Charlotte called me. I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was Rich. It may have been Rich Cho. But and was like, DJ White is showing up. First, he's beating everyone to the gym. And like that was a sign of like, all right, good. Like he's prepared. He didn't play a lot here, but his habits were really solid. They called to kind of say like, this guy's very young, but kind of understands how to operate. And we've always wanted to instill that in the players that we have here. Jeremy Lamb's another example of that. Like he's turned himself into a really good NBA player. Didn't get a ton of opportunity here, but we had to work on a lot of the daily habits, just to get consistent performance, because all those guys are great guys, but as I said, the team with the least blind spots generally gives itself the best chance. The players that know how to limit distractions, that doesn't mean like box yourself in a room and do nothing. It just means knowing when and where those distractions have a place, and then in your professional career where they become detrimental to progress. And that's really, I think it's gotten harder and harder for young players today. And, much has been made about the age limit and all that stuff that is being discussed. And I hope I'm not going to get fined for even saying that. But the level of distraction for all of us in our day-to-day lives is so immense that it's hard to imagine that we can really focus on really much. Try being 19 or 20 years old and trying to create habits and a career for yourself, knowing that you only have 10 to 12, 13 years to play, and you're addicted to your phone, and because your phone is scientifically designed to manipulate your psyche. Like, it literally is designed scientifically to manipulate your mind so that you use it more, right? I mean, I'm addicted to it. You know, I'm addicted to my phone. And now you got a young person that's out there having to play, perform. It's hard. You got to be the more you can compartmentalize those things and see those things for what they are. That's why the older teams do a good job with that. That's why I said the Vegas line, they're factoring that stuff in. That stuff that's the headwind to young teams. I don't see anything wrong with talking about that, because I don't think we have these issues. This is not like saying like, oh, we have this. I'm just forecasting it because I've seen young teams across the NBA. We've had young teams here. And the older teams do a really good job with these things, like I mentioned earlier. And I think we can learn by experience, or we can intentionally try to prioritize some of those things. I think it will help us long term if we don't have to like take the path that everyone generally takes and says, oh, bump my head, shouldn't do that. You know, shouldn't go, you know, we have a game tonight. I shouldn't go spend the whole afternoon doing this because I won't be ready to play tonight. You know, like things you got to learn. Like, oh, I'm more tired right now. Yeah, because you weren't off your feet. That's not prioritizing winning. So I think it comes in more ways than just like, to your point, like trading a bunch of draft picks to get a player that can help you win. Is the group that we have committed to doing those things so that that player can actually be helpful? Or are we still going to be struggling with common things young teams struggle with? I'm pretty confident our team can do it because I know the guys. I think they're going to take it on and understand like this is our opportunity to sharpen the blade, especially in the West.
Sam, if you can tell us without getting fined, are you in favor of reducing the draft age?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't know where the line is. You know, I've said to you guys before, like, you know, we need to see what that stuff looks like. To answer your question initially, Andrew, like, the first thing I should have said is, what are the rules?
Yeah.
You know, what are the rules? Imagine going and doing something really significant and then finding out that the rules have completely changed on you. That would be, you know, 3 times a charm, but I'd like to try to avoid that if we can.
Sam, when Mayor Holt mentioned the possibility of a new arena, there was some pushback by certain members of the OKC community over the concerns that it be individually publicly funded. What would your message be to those concerns?
Oh boy, that's not one I was ready for. I think everybody has a right to an opinion. I think everybody has. That's what makes the country and community we have great. I think those concerns should be heard, and I think the people that feel otherwise should be heard as well. And hopefully through that process, there can be an honest exchange of ideas without there being a polarized point of view of right and wrong, or your tribe and my tribe, or, you know, everything's wrong in the world. Like, the only way to get to that is thoughtful discourse, respectful discourse. But I definitely think that your points are well taken and people should be heard. And I think vice versa, to be heard, you have to also be willing to let other people be heard as well. And hopefully we can come to a place where everybody feels like they've been heard.
Anybody else? All right,
guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. This will be our 15th year. It's not lost on us that a big part of the success of the team is also through the relationship we've had with the media. There's been a lot of different people that have sat in these chairs over the course of time, and everybody's treated us, I feel, fairly. and constructively, and you're a huge factor in the type of message that our fans and all of our people get. And we don't really have control over that. You guys do. And anytime I'm going to sit up here, I'm going to try to answer what you got. I also appreciate you giving me the liberty to speak directly to our fans and our sponsors, and that's what makes it different here. Is I feel I owe that to them a bit, and you guys have always been unbelievable with that. So I know these are long, but I'm very respectful that you allow me to use the time because I want to speak to those people as well. Thank you.